The night Marcus ended our engagement, he did not look ashamed. That was the part that hurt the most. He stood in the middle of my living room, wearing the navy blue suit I had helped him choose for his promotion dinner, and told me he had fallen in love with someone else. His voice was calm, almost polite, as if he were canceling a dinner reservation instead of breaking the future we had planned together. Her name was Vanessa Cole. She was wealthy, elegant, and connected to powerful people in Atlanta. Marcus said she understood the kind of life he wanted. He said those words carefully, but I understood what he really meant. He thought I could not give him enough. I sat on the sofa with my hands folded in my lap. I was 33 years old, a black woman who had spent years building a quiet life from almost nothing. I had loved Marcus for 4 years. I had supported him through job losses, unpaid bills, late-night fears, and every moment when he doubted himself. Now he looked at me like I was part of a life he had outgrown. "Are you saying you want to marry her?" I asked. Marcus looked toward the window. "I think she and I are better suited." Better suited. Those 2 words stayed in the room like smoke. I wanted to cry. I wanted to ask him how long it had been happening. I wanted to remind him that when his car was taken by the bank, I drove him to work every morning. When he could not afford a proper suit for his first interview at Stonewall Industries, I paid for one and never asked for the money back. But I did not say any of that. I only nodded. "Then you should go," I said. Marcus looked surprised. Maybe he expected me to beg. Maybe he wanted tears because tears would prove he was still important to me. Instead, I stood up, walked to the front door, and opened it. For a moment, he did not move. "You are not going to say anything else?" he asked. I looked at the man I had once believed would be my husband. "No," I said softly. "You have already decided what I am worth." His face changed for just a second. Then he picked up his overnight bag and walked out. The door closed behind him. Only then did I let myself breathe. The house felt painfully quiet. His coffee mug was still beside the sink. His jacket hung over the dining chair. On the refrigerator was a small card with the date of our wedding written in gold ink. October 18th, 7 months away. I walked into the bedroom, sat at the edge of the bed, and finally cried. Not loudly, just enough to release the weight in my chest. Marcus believed I was a financial consultant working for a small private firm. That was the story I had allowed him to believe because I wanted to know whether he loved me, not my money. What he did not know was that my late father had left me shares in several companies. Over the years, I had quietly grown that inheritance through careful investments. And 3 weeks before Marcus left me, I had signed the final papers to purchase a controlling interest in Stonewall Industries, the same company where Marcus had just become regional director. He had no idea that the woman he believed was holding him back had become the owner of the company he was using to impress someone richer. I did not buy Stonewall because of him. The deal had been in progress for nearly a year. But as I sat alone in that dark bedroom, staring at the ring he had left on the dresser, I realized something. Soon, Marcus would walk into a meeting and discover exactly who I was. And for the first time that night, I stopped crying. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. For a few seconds, everything felt normal. Then I reached across the bed and touched the empty space where Marcus used to sleep. The silence reminded me that my life had changed overnight. I made myself a cup of coffee and stood by the kitchen window. The city was slowly waking up. Cars moved through the streets, people hurried to work, and the world carried on as if nothing had happened. My phone buzzed. It was a message from my best friend, Denise. "Are you okay?" "I heard about Marcus. I'm coming over." I smiled a little. Denise had always been the sister I never had. An hour later, she arrived with breakfast from my favorite cafe. She hugged me without saying a word. "I still can't believe he left you," she finally whispered. "I can," I replied quietly. "He was chasing a dream that looked expensive." Denise shook her head. "He'll regret it." I wasn't interested in revenge. At least, that was what I kept telling myself. A few days later, social media began showing pictures of Marcus and Vanessa together. They attended charity dinners, rooftop parties, and business events. Every smile looked perfect. Every photo seemed designed to tell the world they belonged together. People left comments saying they looked like a power couple. I closed the app. No picture could show what a person had sacrificed to reach that moment. Later that week, I received a call from my attorney, Mr. Harrison. "The board meeting is Monday morning," he said. "Everything is ready. As the new majority owner, you'll officially introduce yourself to the executive team." I took a slow breath. "I'll be there." When the call ended, I opened the folder on my dining table. Inside were financial reports, acquisition papers, and the final ownership agreement for Stonewell Industries. Marcus had no idea that the company where he worked now answered to me. For years, I had kept my business life private. I never wanted wealth to decide who stayed in my life. I wanted people to know me as Maya Thompson, not as the daughter of a successful investor. Marcus had often complained that I wasn't ambitious enough. "If you dreamed bigger," he used to say, "we could have a different life." Each time, I simply smiled. He never asked what I actually did during my business trips. He never wondered why respected executives greeted me by name or why I could take time off whenever I wanted. He had already decided who I was. The weekend passed quietly. On Sunday evening, I chose a simple charcoal gray business suit and polished black heels. Nothing flashy, nothing meant to impress. I wasn't going to Stonewell to prove Marcus wrong. I was going because it was my responsibility. Still, I couldn't pretend I wasn't wondering what his face would look like when he saw me sitting at the head of the boardroom table. Would he be shocked, embarrassed, ashamed? I honestly didn't know. That night, I slept better than I had in days. Monday morning arrived with clear blue skies. As my driver pulled up to the Stonewell headquarters, I looked up at the tall glass building reflecting the morning sun. Employees hurried through the revolving doors, carrying coffee cups and laptop bags. Somewhere inside, Marcus was probably preparing for another ordinary workday. He was likely thinking about quarterly reports, client meetings, and the future he believed he had finally secured. He had no reason to expect that within the next hour, his entire understanding of me, and perhaps of himself, was about to change forever. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the entrance of Stonewell Industries with steady confidence. The receptionist greeted me with a warm smile. "Good morning, Ms. Thompson. The board is waiting for you." I smiled back and thanked her. Around us, employees hurried through the lobby, unaware that the company had a new majority owner. As the elevator doors closed, I looked at my reflection in the polished steel. My hands were calm. My heart was too. I wasn't there to embarrass anyone. I was there to do my job. The boardroom was quiet when I entered. 8 executives stood to welcome me. Mr. Harrison introduced me with a few kind words before inviting me to the head of the table. "We're honored to have you here, Ms. Thompson," he said. "Thank you," I replied. "I'm looking forward to working with all of you." Just then, the conference room door opened again. Marcus walked in carrying a laptop and a stack of reports. He was talking to another manager until he looked up. The color disappeared from his face. His eyes locked onto mine. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Maya," he whispered. The room became completely silent. One of the directors smiled politely. "Mr. Brooks, please take your seat. I'd like you to meet our new majority owner and chairwoman, Ms. Maya Thompson." Marcus stared at me as though he had forgotten how to breathe. His mouth opened, but no words came out. I simply nodded. "Good morning, Marcus." He slowly sat down, never taking his eyes off me. The meeting began. I spoke about the company's future, new investments, employee development, and long-term growth. I thanked everyone for their hard work and explained that I believed strong companies were built by people, not by fear. As I spoke, I noticed Marcus wasn't taking notes. He barely moved. His entire world had shifted in a matter of seconds. When the meeting ended, the executives gathered their papers and left the room. Marcus remained seated. As the door closed behind the last director, he finally stood. You own Stonewell?" he asked quietly. "Yes." "Since when?" "The acquisition was completed 3 weeks before you ended our engagement." He covered his face with one hand. "Oh my God." "I didn't hide it to trick you," I said calmly. "I kept my business life private because I wanted people to love me for who I was." He looked down at the floor. "I thought you were just a consultant." "I know." His voice became softer. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Because you never asked." The words hung between us. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was simply telling the truth. Marcus let out a slow breath. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." I felt sadness, but not satisfaction. The man standing before me wasn't the confident fiancé who had walked away only days earlier. He looked exhausted, smaller somehow. "I hope you're happy with Vanessa," I said gently. He shook his head almost immediately. "It's not what I thought." Before I could answer, someone knocked on the door. It was Marcus's assistant. "Mr. Brooks, Ms. Vanessa Cole is here in the lobby. She says she's meeting you for lunch." Marcus closed his eyes. Then he looked back at me. For the first time since I had met him, I saw genuine regret instead of ambition. And deep inside, I realized this story was no longer about revenge. It was about the price people pay when they mistake someone's quiet heart for a small life. Marcus stood there for several seconds after his assistant left the room. He looked torn between two worlds. One was waiting downstairs, dressed in designer clothes and surrounded by the kind of luxury he had always dreamed about. The other was standing in front of him, quietly leading the company he had worked so hard to impress. "I should go," he said, barely above a whisper. I nodded. "She's waiting for you." Marcus hesitated before walking out of the boardroom. I watched the door close behind him, then turned my attention back to the reports on the table. I had a company to lead, and hundreds of employees depended on good decisions. My personal heartbreak could not become their burden. The next few weeks were busy. I visited every department, listened to employees, and introduced new programs for training and career growth. I believed people deserved respect, whether they worked in the executive offices or cleaned the hallways after everyone else had gone home. Slowly, the atmosphere inside Stonewell began to change. People smiled more. Managers listened better. The company started growing stronger. One afternoon, my assistant knocked gently on my office door. "Ms. Thompson, Marcus Brooks is asking if he can speak with you." I looked up from my laptop. "Send him in." Marcus entered quietly. He looked different than he had just a month earlier. The expensive confidence was gone. Dark circles rested under his eyes and his smile had disappeared. "Thank you for seeing me," he said. I motioned toward the chair across from my desk. He sat down and folded his hands. "I owe you an apology." I remained silent. "I wasn't just chasing money," he continued. "I was chasing the feeling that I had finally made it. Vanessa represented everything I thought success looked like." He lowered his eyes, but I confused wealth with character. The room stayed quiet. He took a slow breath. "She ended things last week." I wasn't surprised. She told me she only dated me because she thought I would become a senior executive with influence. Once she realized I wasn't as important as she believed, she walked away. There was no anger in his voice, only disappointment. "I'm sorry that happened," I said honestly. Marcus looked at me with tired eyes. "You still have compassion for me after everything I did." I don't enjoy seeing people suffer. He smiled sadly. That's one of the reasons I fell in love with you. I looked out the window for a moment. The city stretched beneath us, busy as always. Love isn't only about how we feel, I said softly. It's about the choices we make when life gives us difficult options. Marcus nodded slowly. I understand that now. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small velvet box on my desk. Inside was the engagement ring. I should have returned this sooner, he said. I don't expect another chance. I just wanted to give back something that belonged to a better future than the one I created. I closed the box gently. Thank you. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. Maya, whether you forgive me or not, thank you for showing me what real success looks like. After he left, I sat quietly, holding the ring in my hand. Months earlier, I had imagined wearing it for the rest of my life. Now it simply reminded me that some people lose the greatest blessings they ever receive, not because they aren't loved, but because they fail to recognize the value of the person standing beside them until it's too late.